APO for hosting this virtual happy hour. I hope all of you guys have been doing well. I'm really happy and delighted to be sharing with you a pre-recorded video. We'll see if there'll be more technical difficulties with that shortly. And to have the chance to connect with everybody to make sure just to check in and see that everyone's doing well. Thank you for the feedback, seeing that it's working. Great, that's good news. My name is Er-Gene Kahng. I have been concertmaster with the APO. I was trying to think back, actually. I can't quite remember. APO obviously is celebrating its 10th anniversary, but I don't think I was there since 2010. My first memory of APO was soloing with APO, playing Vivaldi's Four Seasons with Stephen, and I believe that was also the first time that I met Stephen. A very memorable concert for many reasons, and it's been really amazing to see, well, first of all, to realize that it's been 10 years, but also to see the development of the organization. So thank you so much again to APO for me, what has been so remarkable from the very beginning was its commitment to community and education, and to realize that with such an antiquated vehicle such as the orchestra, that it's really been, to me, an effective vessel to communicate modern values, modern basically being current values, that it's still able to speak to the issues and the values of today and not just be a kind of museum piece. So thank you for that opportunity to continue to share music and to build community. The piece that I've prepared for you today is Philip Glass's first violin concerto, which was written in 1987, and it will just be its second movement. I chose this piece mostly because I've kind of been working on it, and I'm not really working on it for any reason other than I just became really fascinated with it. I was also trying to remember maybe my first experiences encountering Philip Glass, and I would love to know, since he's kind of a main pop star type of composer, you know, what your guys' first experiences with Philip Glass was. And or what was your first piece in which you discovered Philip Glass, the composer? For me, I think it was actually his fifth string quartet. I had to play it as a requirement. And I remember in the beginning being quite bored by the music, because when you open the score and when you open your own part, at least anyone who's familiar with the fifth string quartet, and as minimalist music goes, it's just a series of eighth notes, and then maybe some harmonic shifts, maybe 100 bars later. So upon looking at the score, I wasn't too impressed. But then I remember the first rehearsal, putting it together with my musician friends and thinking, this is an incredible sound world. And I know a lot of my composer friends will disagree with me on this, and that's also something that I've also thought was such an interesting divide, that as a general rule, it seems that a lot of my composer friends do not approve of Philip Glass's aesthetic, whereas a lot of my performer friends truly derive meaning from it and enjoy playing it on a physical level and to enter his sound world. He's become kind of a cliche, maybe. I feel that almost any kind of recent film score, I think the most recent one actually is not so recent, but it was The Hours. I actually didn't check the credits before I went to this film, and remember in the opening credits thinking, wow, this composer is really ripping off Philip Glass. And then, of course, a few seconds later realizing it was Philip Glass. So in that regard, I find that his music perhaps has become a cliche. But for me, this second movement has always been super special. So I'm looking forward to sharing that arrangement with you shortly. I compiled a list of some biographical details that I thought you guys might find interesting. I, again, thought I knew a lot more about Philip Glass than I do. And some of these will just kind of be trivia, but hopefully some of these things will be interesting. So Philip Glass is considered an American pianist and composer. He was born in 1937 in Baltimore. This is something that I didn't know. He is the son of Lithuanian Jewish immigrants. And for you guys who are not aware, I wasn't aware of this, Glass is deeply invested in humanitarian causes, and a lot of that you can see already had origins from his childhood. His mother and father, upon immigration, his mother worked as a librarian and his father worked as a record collector, and their family housed a lot of Jewish Holocaust survivors, and his mother was very, very pivotal and essential in providing a place of shelter for survivors and also devising a plan to help them gain employment by teaching them English, for example, and training them in necessary employable skills. His sister, Sheppy, continues a lot of the similar humanitarian work. She's an active member of the IRC, the International Rescue Committee. A lot of his exposure to music can also be attributed to his father's record collection. Philip Glass basically collected and amassed quite a collection from all of the unsold records from his father's store. I kind of thought it was funny that a lot of the unsold records included Hindemith, Bartok, Schoenberg, Shostakovich, some of the more cacophonous music that we associate with, although apparently there was also quite a collection of Beethoven and Schubert, and he considered Schubert actually one of his most formative musical influences, which again, only knowing that he was a minimalist, I found that also really, really interesting. He had a Fulbright scholarship to study in Paris, where actually he was not so impressed by the music. John Cage and Morton Feldman being kind of the exceptions, he was actually more drawn to the Parisian experimental theater and films of the time, being exposed to French New Wave cinema, so auteurs like Jean-Luc Godard and Francois Truffaut. He's attributed to saying, in terms of the kind of origins of his musical aesthetic, that he respects the composers that were in vogue at the time, such as Boulez and Stockhausen and Berio. He basically said, we've all studied their music at Juilliard, how can you possibly reject them? But there is also no point as a composer in attempting to do their music better than they did. We have to start somewhere else. There's another quote that I remember being attributed to him, which was when he was at Juilliard, he kind of took his rudimentary music theory classes and all the things that we have to do, applied lessons, music history classes, and he kind of had this moment where he looked around and thought, I'm not hearing any of the music that I would want to hear. So then apparently he decided then to create it himself. I'm sure it wasn't that easy, but for me, it's interesting to read biographies of many composers and creative artists and realize that they always have this classic dichotomy and conflict between tradition and innovation. And I think even as people, we always have this need, right, to absorb the traditions that we inherit, but then ultimately to express and give voice to that unique voice, which we must also discover and be nourished through tradition. So Glass definitely also had this as well. He started, one of his first film scores involved a collaboration with the sitarist Ravi Shankar and the tabla player Ala Raka, which was also yet another formative experience for Glass. This was probably the turn of his musical aesthetic to what we now recognize more. His style prior to that was more like Neo and Copland and Barber, and he became so fascinated by Indian music at that time that he started thinking about ways to incorporate repetitive structures and a sense of also minimal time by, which was inspired by the writer Samuel Beckett. This was all in the 60s where minimalism was very much in vogue and existent across different art forms. So it's interesting, again, just to see all the cross-nourishment under the sort of general umbrella of minimalism that Glass was able to tap into. Let me see if I can transfer over to the pre-recorded video and tell you a little bit about the second movement, as I was saying, about this 1987 violin concerto number 1. He wrote this in memory of his late father, and the first thing that I remember upon listening to the second movement was that despite its repetitiveness, there's a kind of melancholy, a beautiful melancholy and mourning. I don't know if necessarily this arrangement of it will be able to effectively represent that, but I find it extremely melodic, and I find it also really interesting how there's a classic interplay between orchestra and soloist, which of course we all know is essential to a concerto, but for me, just the fact that it's so minimal in texture means that there's this really obvious symmetry that happens in the movement where basically the soloist and orchestra will trade places. And Glass spends all this time establishing, in a way, hierarchical roles, and then spends the rest of the movement kind of destabilizing that. And the ending of the movement ends open-ended harmonically, which to me, that's one of my favorite ways to end a piece of music, where it's the ending is left open. It gives my mind something to play around with, and it stirs the imagination a lot more than something final, although something final is also very satisfying as well. So let me try to transfer over here. If the folks who are tuning in can give me some feedback as to whether the video is working, that would be great as well. everybody again. It's a little weird for me because I actually can't hear the audio. And I also was not sure the live video was on initially because it's showing up black on my screen. So it's quite a weird nihilistic experience, literally talking into the void. I realize that our time to say goodbye is quickly approaching. So let me share with you my sangria recipe. There's a lot of variations, obviously. I don't claim to know much about sangria, but I have to say I'm pretty happy with my rendition of it, and it's the first time I have actually made it. So I don't know what to start with, but I was advised on a basic red, of course, because you're going to be adding a bunch of fruit into it, so no reason to splurge on an expensive red. But I have a 2018 Turcos Mendoza Sangiovese, and I can put, for anyone who's interested, the recipe that I used. It's actually from the Minimalist Baker, for anyone who kind of follows the Minimalist Baker. So the idea, just like Philip Glass with minimalism, just five recipes or less, or 5 ingredients or less. There is the classic pears, apples, pineapple. I forgot oranges, unfortunately, but I actually put orange juice instead of brandy. And you can also obviously substitute that for a simple syrup. But I was actually quite happy. I was afraid that because it was so minimal, it wouldn't be fruity enough, but I'm quite happy with it. I think the only thing that I wasn't anticipating is that the pears and the apples kind of all look the same, and I'm not even really sure where my pineapples are. But anyway, that is my sangria recipe that I would like to share with you, possibly in the comments afterwards. Do you guys have any questions for me? Greg. Well, that's the thing. I've never been one of those musicians who have been able to drink during intermission or drink before a concert. It really affects my my motor skills. So unfortunately, if you're talking about how it affects my playing, I make sure it never does, let's say. If you guys don't have any questions, there's 2 other things I wanted to share with you guys. If you guys are familiar of Joel Thompson, the composer, you may be aware of his really, really powerful piece, The 7 Last Words of the Unarmed, which is in reference to the 7 Last Words of Christ by Haydn. It was premiered, I don't know if it was 2015 or 2017, but basically a few years back, for men's chorus and orchestra. A friend passed along recently the arranged version for piano quintet and men's chorus, and I just thought it's too powerful and too important and too good not to share. So this is basically a YouTube link. So you'll be hearing a lot from me after this live posting, but I just wanted to say that if you're not familiar with it, it's something that you must listen to. And just to give you a quick summary of that piece, Joel Thompson basically took on a musical expression of the visual artist Shirin Barjee's Last Words project, which I'll also link in the notes as well. Basically the 7 last words of 7 unarmed black men. And I'll just share them with you really quickly if you'll allow me to. Number 1 is, why do you have your guns out? Kenneth Chamberlain. What are you following me for? Trayvon Martin. Mom, I'm going to college. Amado Diallo. I don't have a gun. Stop shooting. Michael Brown. You shot me. Oscar Grant. It's not real. John Crawford. And I Can't Breathe. Eric Gardner. And now George Floyd. So the link that I will share with you is actually just from 2 or 3 weeks ago. It's absolutely amazing. Listen to both the orchestral version as well as the chamber music version. You will be definitely moved by it. I think I have a few minutes left. Do you guys have any questions for me? If you don't, and if you guys are feeling chatty, I was saying this to a friend the other day. It's interesting to think about our first known memories at which music hooked us. The moments in childhood, and then various other points, I suppose, as we continue to develop, where we are reaffirmed and where we kind of have a chance to confirm as a musician what we do, the power of what we do, as a supporter, as an audience, why we keep coming back to concerts, why music continues to function as an essential part of our lives. I'd be really curious to hear from you guys if you'd like to share what those moments or what that moment was for you guys. I was trying to think of how I might answer that my own question. And I think I actually do not have something super profound. I think for me, because I started violin at 5 and I was trained through the Suzuki program, I think the first moment I was hooked as a child was hearing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star played in a group setting. So that was my first known memory of music hooking me. Greg is asking, are current composers making political music? And what do I think of the quality of this art? Well, it depends on what you mean by current, Greg, because I was talking to a composer friend who basically was weighing the pros and cons of, well, first of all, composition is a long process. So anyone who is composing music about our current political situation, we will probably not be hearing those pieces until probably 2021. Not only because of that, but also, as you know, a lot of concert halls are closed. But even if they weren't, composition is quite a long process. I would probably say any composer who is working on a substantive work is probably 1 year out. So I'm guessing, yes, probably current composers are making political music. I would say it's sort of always been embraced or rejected by composers. And I think that's also the beauty of music, is that it's such a large sphere that it holds the space for a variety of values, personalities, temperaments. So there are certainly people, I'm sure, who are making music that will be looked upon later on as the music sort of essential to 2020. So it's to be determined, and of course it's going to be a personal assessment about its quality. I think music always addresses something, so, and even when it claims to be completely absolute and abstract, I think it basically means that it can hold the multiplicity of things and is easily moldable to subjectivity, but ultimately I think the quality of the art is also dependent on the mindset that audiences bring to it. I don't know, maybe that's sort of a cop-out answer, but if nobody else has any questions, thank you so much. Thank you for letting me talk at you. I realize that I maybe treated this kind of like it was a lecture on Philip Glass, which I wasn't trying to, I promise. I just found so many interesting things as I was trying to get prepared for this, and I think I just overloaded you guys with a bunch of trivia. So I will include the recipe to my sangria and the link to Joel Thompson's work, and hope that you enjoy it. Thank you so much again to Arkansas Philharmonic for providing this time and this space. Thank you for all the work that you have been doing and then that you are continuing to do. It's an honor to be part of your organization. I'm very proud to be part of your organization. And thank you to everyone who's tuned in and continues to support APO. Have a wonderful evening, you guys. Thank you.